I cannot really do this. It's a different language. People speak in different terms. I don't understand what is this about, and it's extremely complex. And I went back to the basics. I went follow the money, follow the people that you're trying to service. In this case, it was the employees, and try to improve service.
Welcome to Broken Benefits. I'm your host, Lee Lewis, and this is a podcast where we learn from top employer experts on how to fix our broken benefits to save lives, save dollars, and save your talent. All right, welcome back everyone to Broken Benefits. I'm your host, Lee Lewis, and excited about today's guest, Elena Bueno-Gonzalez from down in the Southeast in Florida. Elena is not a native of the United States. And if you can imagine how challenging healthcare is for all of us who have grown up here, she came to this country at the age of 21 from Venezuela, and English is her second language, and the United States is her second home country. She worked in mathematics and led the trading floor on, I think, commodities energy trading for one of the largest, perhaps the largest one of the largest energy companies in the United States, and then was placed in charge of health and welfare benefits by a visionary people officer, Deb Kaplan. And in that time, in a short time, accomplished some amazing things. So excited to bring her on today. Elena, welcome to the call.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor, and I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, so glad, so glad. So what was it like? I almost wonder what you felt first being placed into the role of leading health and welfare benefits, healthcare, health insurance for folks in the United States coming from a trader and math background. What did you think when that promotion came in?
Yeah, the first reaction was, oh my God, Deb Kaplan, the person that hired me, I was thinking, you're crazy. Like, why me to run benefits coming from two trade floors? I worked at Morgan Stanley in the mortgage-backed securities trade floor, and I worked in the Nextera trade floor. And it was like, I cannot really do this. It's a different language. People speak in different terms. I don't understand what is this about, and it's extremely complex. And I went back to the basics. I went follow the money, follow the people that you're trying to service. In this case, it was the employees, and try to improve service. So I enjoyed it. It was one of the best roles I have had in the company. It's really going back to the basics and understanding how the economics work, and really attacking it from that perspective.
Wow. And so approaching this with sort of a very open mind, what were the things that jumped out at you as you started analyzing this very complex industry, and what were some of the problems that started to jump out that you thought, I need to solve these?
Yeah, so I came at a time that healthcare expenses were going up and up and up, and we were spending a significant amount of money on it. Realizing quickly, coming from a trade floor mentality, I realized quickly we were warehousing all of the risk. So I'm like, we're warehousing all of the risk, and we have zero control. And we have zero control to give our employees a really good service. So what really jumped at me quickly was I have no control over the process. I'm spending whatever somebody decides, and that person that is deciding to spend that money has no control either. So the first thing that I tried to do was, how is this money flowing? Who's incentivized to do what? And I came with a benefit of coming with such a fresh perspective that I really went into the basics. So that was super helpful.
Everyone, now just a quick word from today's sponsor.
Lemonade for 50 cents. It's for a good cause.
This situation seems terrible, right? Well, what if I told you it actually happened in the United States in 2021? These are the families of people who work for companies just like yours. Give your employees 100% medical coverage with Catalyze Health.
I love the principles that you're pointing out here. Follow the money. We have all the risk, but we don't have any of the control. We're spending what someone else decides. That there's this disconnect between the person providing the service, the person establishing the price, the person paying for the service, and the person receiving the benefit of the service. In any other industry, those are sort of aligned entities, but here they're not.
Yeah.
As you looked at that and said, okay, these are all issues, what are the first things that you wanted to tackle?
So the first thing that I did, Lee, and that's the time that I met you, was I gotta understand what is the landscape, right? So the first thing that I said is who's advising you into which one is the best network, right? Because the very first I realized is the prices are being done by who? The network, right? Like that's the negotiated price, the majority of it. I'm like, who's advising you on that? First thing I did is how long has that person been advising that is the best network? If the answer is a long time, we're up, right? Again, commercial trader mentality was coming from where do I have risk that I have someone that is either being complacent or not thinking completely commercial about. So that was one thing I did. The second one is, so I open it up. Say, and that's what I learned about TPAs. I'm like, wait, so because I open it up with how do I gain commercial control and how do I improve cost overall? That was what I was looking at. How do I give control to my employees so they can make better decisions? Simple, basic terms, right? And how do I get the actual cost down? So I open it up for a very open dialogue RFP. And then I learned a ton in that because the moment you open it up for competition, you get the advisor from the middle that has been advising the company for 20 years. I really got 10,000 ideas. And every time you get 10,000 ideas, like you start double clicking in each one of those. It took us time. That's actually the time I think it was the first time I met you. And we got to where we are today. We actually put a TPA, we changed the network, we gave control to our employees, and we had material amount of savings for the company.
Yes, the results were remarkable. I believe negative trend. I mean, you were able to, without hurting anybody, but by improving the benefit to the employees, instead of the high single digit, low double digit trend upwards, you did the opposite while improving the benefit.
We absolutely did the opposite. Not only we did the opposite, the employees were happy. So it was a double win on that. Like it improved our bottom line, but it improved their bottom line because their deductibles are first. All of their expenses are first, and service was better. It was really good. But it was not easy. It was really not easy because nobody gets fired for having IBM, right? Like it
Right.
was not easy.
What were some of the biggest challenges you ran into? I can imagine, and just with the preface that anybody who's trying to do something different than the norm is going to swim in an ocean of resistance, but maybe walk through some of those obstacles that you had to overcome.
I think the biggest challenge, I had two big challenges. One, we've been with the same network and the same companies, the same players for a gazillion years. So and the company was comfortable. So it was really hard to help them really gain the following that I needed internally when I was new. This is the new person from the trade floor that is going to come and think that this is a trade floor. So taking that away was not easy, right? Like, hey, wait a second, these are real players. This is not like I'm not going to a small shop in the corner to do all your medical expenses. So first, giving their vision. And then second, really executing, like making sure that we have an execution plan. Those were the two biggest challenges. It took us 6 months to get approved. Like we went at it, and I was very deliberate. I went leader by leader because there is a committee that governs the benefits for the company. I went leader by leader, one-on-one. Said this is why we want to do this, and then I called the committee. So it was a lot of work to gain the support internally, and a lot of work to make sure, once I got commercial support, to make sure that they were comfortable that I had a good execution.
Wow. There's a ton to unpack there in terms of thinking about how to gain buy-in. And this is a theme that I've seen in some other settings and other interviews, that when you want to do something big and different, you identify the decision makers who need to be persuaded, and don't let it happen all at once in a public forum, but really work with those individuals to get buy-in and explain how it works. When you sat down with those individuals, you have a plan now to do major changes, network changes, administrator changes, adjustments to plan design, different point solutions. Many of these are not cheap, and you're dealing with incumbents that are well established. How did you sit down and make the case for change, especially as an outsider, where you're coming from the trading floor and you're a math major? Tell me about how did you sit down and make the case to win them to your side?
Well, I have to say that the credit is not only mine, right? The credit is also to Deb Kaplan, my boss at the time, who had first the vision to put somebody commercial in this role and encourage somebody to think commercial. The other thing that she had a very strong team underneath. So even though I was the stranger coming from the trade floor that didn't speak English before, I spoke English by then, but it was really important for, at that particular time, that my team underneath really was making sure that we were protected from all angles, and we were thinking about all the steps. So I think that two things were: the company was at the right place, Deb gave me the right cover underneath and on the sides, and I really went to them with a very pragmatic view. We're going to save money. The employees are going to save money, and they're going to get a better service. Why would you not do this? Yes, there is risk, but the benefits outweigh the risk, and the benefits are to the employees more than the company. So when they saw, wow, yes, and they are all feeling these ever-raising prices on healthcare. So they were all getting pressure for increasing premiums, and I came with, we're not going to increase premiums, most likely. We may actually be okay, even giving more coverage, and the employees are going to have a better service. It was an easy win. It took some work, but it was an easier win.
Love that approach, that ultimately, when you're trying to do the right thing and you need to get internal buy-in, many organizations think, oh, a good outcome is a trend that's the same as everybody else and nobody complains, and that's good. When in reality, that trend going is it's devastating to families, to people, to budgets, everything, to compensation pressure, etc. And when you're trying to convince people the other side, saving money for the organization may be good, but I think the way that you've done that, I think the human element of this is good for our people, it's the right thing to do for our people, ultimately is what helps to get people there. Even oftentimes jaded executives, if you have them, say a CFO or a controller or something like that, it's, hey, this is going to save us money, sure, but it's the right thing to do for our people, and remembering to include that. I love that you did that and anchored that way.
Yeah, and I think what was really helpful is really, as I came in with the pragmatic approach of, Where is the money being spent and what control do our employees? That's what drove me to the TPA. What drove me to the TPA was I need the best cost structure in the back. That's the network. And I needed the TPA to help the employee go to the right place and really administer that part. Again, taking the incentives away in the wrong place. So that's what I was trying to figure out. How can I empower the employee to make the right decision for their own healthcare, and how can I either reduce or get the best possible contracts in the back, which is the network. So it's unpacking what is a very convoluted and together system that is actually not for the benefit of the company or the employees.
That's right. And how did the TPA help you to empower your people?
Well, I think a few things. One is we did a couple of things to rate doctors and give them real feedback to employees. That was a data system on the side that they allow us to put in place. So it was not who the network thinks is the best doctor. It was who we thought was the best doctor. And you can either buy that service or do it on the side, but it allows us to navigate things a little better. The TPA also gave them like ability to call someone and really ask questions and really get the right answer in real time, instead of being completely in the dark, hoping that someone like the big networks, the Blues or UHC or Cigna, is actually going to do that effectively. So the TPA, since to make sure that that employee at that particular or family member at that particular time is going to the right place and having the right care quickly, versus, let's face it, the network, again, follow the money, follow the motivation. The network has another rules or set of rules that they're following that are not necessarily aligned with the proper care in that particular time. The network should do what they're doing best, which is they have volumes of life and they negotiate contracts. Get the best network, get the best administrator, and it should follow. Now, in hindsight, now it's simple, and it's simple in principle. It's just not easy to execute, but I encourage everybody that has the opportunity to execute on it because it helps.
I love this. Now let's unpack this. So you found a TPA who could pay claims really well, had a pretty flexible customer service offering, was able to allow you to bring any tools that you wanted, and was willing to give you all the data that you needed. They checked all those boxes. So you were excited about that. Then you went and found a network that was going to give you, as you say, aggregating lots of lives and getting a good discount. But did those two work together at the time you made those decisions? They did not. So
they did not.
How in the world did you pull that hat trick off?
I don't know. They did not, and that was where I was like, okay, you're owned by them? No, you're owned by them? No. I came with, I want people to be independent and to provide the service that they're good at. And that kind of was the principle that I was trying to follow. So I really was trying to get somebody independent, truly independent, because if not, I'm like, how do I know that they're driving people in the right direction, that they're paying claims and protecting the payment of the claims? I needed to make sure that the checkbook is protected. And if you give the checkbook openly to somebody, how do you, again, trading mentality, commercial mentalities, I was not thinking about necessarily what are the motivations, but I was thinking if I break them, then I can probably unpack that. And it was a really good decision. Now, transactions happen after the fact. So keeping a TPA that is independent is proving to be hard, but I think that is necessary. I think actually big companies should put a TPA and own it. It's necessary.
Just to have that independence there. So you now had this TPA and you had the network. Now, there was one advantage that you all are a pretty good sized plan. I mean, many tens of thousands of employees, over 30,000 plus people in total on your plan. So you have a little bit of buying power there. Nevertheless, the network that you wanted to use did not have a connection with your administrator. So how did you have that conversation? Was it kind of a knock, knock, hey, we want to use these guys, can you make it work? Or I'm sure they weren't in love with that idea. How did you get them to your side?
So Lee, that's, you're hitting in the head. I think the key is you gotta unfortunately move. When you are with a network and you say, I'm going to move unless I have an independent TPA, you give me they are going to say no. But when the other network is saying that's the only way for me to acquire that new business because they're not lives that I have today, then they said, okay, if that's the only way we're going to get it, I'm going to let you do it. And they let us do it. So, but the existing network at the time that I was doing that was not willing to do it, and in fact, they didn't do it, and they didn't think I was serious, but I was serious, and I ended up moving. So I think you have to try. I mean, if your network is good, I think you should just try to put the TPA. But if you get enough resistance, you say, good, I'm willing to move, and then to the network that is now receiving you as a business is going, okay, I don't like it when it comes with a TPA, but if that's the only way to get that new business, then they start becoming more flexible.
Yeah, it's interesting
You
too
have to
that
be, you have to be firm and you have to be determined and you have to say, I want to do it no matter what, and we did.
what's remarkable to me is here you're one of the largest employers in your state, and you're saying, hey, we want to do this. Clearly, you're an important customer, but the incumbents, and this can happen in any area, not just medical carrier, your PBM, your consultant, you're saying, look, we want this. And if you don't, we're going to leave. And they say, yeah, sure. Yeah. You think you're going to leave, but we're entitled to this. And you warned them multiple times. And then ultimately they still didn't capitulate. They're like, well, we're going to call your bluff. That's how much power is there. But it also is a good reminder that anyone who's wanting to do this seriously needs to be prepared, needs to find an alternative. Even if you want to stay where you're at, you've got to find an alternative that is equally compelling so that you have that walkaway power, that you don't, because if you had given in, I don't know if you could get anything done ever again.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Lee, I think looking back, and I don't know that was by design or not, because I cannot remember, but the person issuing the RFP was even independent. Like, if you are advised by some of these firms that are checking prices for the network and it's the same advisor, that's the first thing that we need to change, right? Like, go get a Lawton, Aon, or whomever is going to issue that RFP should not be the one that is currently servicing you, because people get complacent and they tend to say, okay, you've been serviced by X network, that network has the same pricing, things are good, move on and check. And listen, they get fees on one of those for doing minimal work. I think you need to really take an advisor that is running the RFP that is truly independent and is trying to bring different solutions to the table.
Totally. No, I love that. I love that perspective. It's funny too. I interviewed Bob Galvin a couple episodes ago, the head of equity healthcare for Blackstone. And they said on their playbook, whenever they went to a new company, the very first thing they said is, when was the last time you did an RFP on your broker, on your advisor? They didn't even bring up network, TPA, PBM, nothing. It was, when was the last time you shopped brokers? Okay, if it's more than 2 years, you need to do that. And over 90% said, we haven't shopped our broker in 5+ years. And when they did, over 90% switched. Remarkable statistic that it was that startling once they got an additional opinion that they were changing. And I think that's really telling you started in the same place.
I would argue that is the most important step. Is who's your broker, and how are they incentivized? I have no idea, but I found it interesting that the broker didn't give me black and white the difference in network pricing. It took me to change the broker to realize that there was more in there. So again, I think if you go to pragmatic, follow the money. If you go to pragmatic about who's advising me, are they really independent? How many times have they placed the same people? Do I have the right advisor? So that's the first thing I did, is I changed the advisor. Then once I changed the advisor, I said, okay, now advisor, I'm hiring you because I want a very different set of offering. You can give me the incumbent offer, but I want a different set of offers and structures of how we're going to do that. And I want to break the players. So I said, to win, you got to have two players instead of one out of the gate, TPA and network. So you can give me the normal offering. Of course, the network was thinking, you're not going to pull this off. And I was dead serious. So then I went through the process and it got done. It's rewarding. I'll tell you, it's what it has given me more career with the company. I mean, not only I took care of the employees and I took care of the bottom line and save money, but I showed to the company that we can do a better thing. So I think that alone should be a motivation for anybody that is trying to figure this out.
This is important too. I interact with a lot of people who are moving into benefits, and the sentiment is, hey, I'll do this for a couple of years. I'm probably on a 3-year rotation or something. I don't want to rock the boat. Make sure everything works properly, and then I'll be out of here. What advice would you give to somebody who's in that role? Because I can't change things in 3 years, right? There's not something meaningful that I could do there. But you learned and you proved that's not true at all.
We did it in, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years when all said and done. So I would tell that person the opposite, right? Like, they put you in that position because they believe you can think differently, and it's a great place to prove that you can think and execute differently, and that you're a leader in the company. You're doing the right thing for the company at all times, and for the companies, for the employees too. So at that time, a mandate was try to save money and try to improve the service to our employees. And those are two very difficult things to do, and you can do it. You can do it in less than 2 years if you really are deliberate, right? You go in, I'm going to understand it, I'm going to get a different broker, or I'm going to challenge at least the status quo, and then I want to understand how the independency works in between the TPAs and the networks. I think you can absolutely do it. And it's your duty. Like, if I am a CEO and I see somebody that did that, well, they are capable of doing many other things in the company. So I do think it's an opportunity for somebody that goes into that role to use it as a platform to show what they can do.
Highlighting a couple nuggets there. One is that benefits isn't a temporary parking lot. It is a place where, maybe even more than any other area of the organization, there's so much entrenched industrial architecture in place that you can bring new thinking there, and that it is so beneficial for the organization that it's not a place of obscurity, but if you do it right, it can be a place to significantly demonstrate your talents and capabilities that leads to enhancements in your career, maybe even very quickly. That flies in the face of a lot of common beliefs in this area. And I think that is such an exciting thing to be able to share. Look, you're in benefits now. This is a great place to make a stand and show what you're made of, show what you can do in terms of being able to help people and help the bottom line.
And if you do it right, it's very rewarding, right? You help all your colleagues and friends have better healthcare and and better access to healthcare, and you help the company think differently. And honestly, once you put the structure, that you can continue to improve the structure. So you can continue, oh, I don't like this network. Well, your front is the same. Your TPA stays. You change the network. Oh, I don't like the broker. You can figure that out. Oh, I don't like the analytics, data analytics. Like, I don't like the recommendations that they're bringing. You can have your own data analytics people internally. There's so much you can do once you do it.
Oh, I love that. Let's pause for a minute on analytics. So you were in a position where you did have an analytics firm, but you also had staff that were able to do it, that were able to manage it. You obviously come from a background of significant use of numbers, both on the financial side as well as even just generally speaking through mathematics. What were the numbers that you went after that you needed to know, that you pulled out of the hundreds of millions of dollars of claims data that you had access to?
Yeah, so we had a team of a few math PhDs and analysts on top of an external vendor that helped us with the analytics. And I was after, what are the bottom line numbers? Like, what am I paying for each one of those claims, and what is that claim on? Obviously de-identified, but I had all the information about if you had any surgery, what it cost, what was my payment, money out the door. I ended up following the dollars, right? And with that information, all I ended up using it for was to identify outliers and then challenging either the TPA or the network on those outliers. And it actually helped us we found fraud in those claims. We found so many things. When you start looking at the distribution of these things and you go, everybody charges about $2 and one is charging me $5, there's something there. There's a smoking gun. And you keep following the money, and eventually find it, where it's coming from. So the other thing that this entire thing helped was to try to find where you had issues. And we had them. We cleaned them. Don't rely on one person. It won't happen. And yes, there is administration cost on this. You have a few vendors instead of just one, but I'll tell you, worth every single penny.
That's terrific. Let's talk for a minute about communications and empowerment. You were really active in trying to empower your people. It's notoriously hard to do. How did you design a plan that made it easier for people to find their way to quality so you could start steering your spend and getting control of your business?
So we advertise a lot to the employees about this way to find good care, find the right provider. And so the first thing is, even during open enrollment, we told them about the website and how to seek good care and how to follow it. And then we basically empower them to do it. The other thing that we did is we put some incentives around it to actually go and find. Obviously, do check your numbers and do the primary care and all that, but we put incentives to go and sign up on the website to give them the information that they needed to find the right care.
Interesting. So create incentives, advertise it a lot, help people to use it. Did you get the result from that you were looking for? Was the uptake pretty good, or was it?
It was. Process? I mean, it's hard to tell exactly if they really follow the recommendation of the service, but we definitely got the results on claims and on cost. So to me, that was a win-win. I'll be honest, that is the part that I wish I stayed longer in that job to see what was it? Was it the better network? Was it the better service? Was it the analytics? And what was attributed to? We did some analysis before I left, and And it was a combination of the three was my conclusion at the very beginning. But as you follow through longer, you probably have more data. But you know how HR data is. I'm out.
Everyone, now just a quick word from today's sponsor.
Mom, are you crying?
No, sweetie, just some allergies. Come here, let's go play. Come on.
1 in 4 Americans had trouble paying a recent medical bill. Many of these people affected work for companies just like yours. Start giving your employees 100% medical coverage with Catalyze Health.
As you thought about and got to know other people in benefits, was there a moment where you realized, oh, I'm kind of doing things different than the way a lot of my peers or colleagues do things? Did that realization ever set in? Did you have enough opportunities to engage with others to realize, oh wait, I'm thinking about this world really differently?
From this first second, I went, first of all, when you are trying to run these RFPs and you get resistance immediately. And then I was a member of a few organizations, one being the HTA, and you talk to people there, and I got that you're not going to be able to pull that off a lot. And then I realized, oh, looks like I'm trying to climb a pretty steep mountain, but that actually encouraged me more, because I'm like, oh, now pull it off, because I saw the value. So for me, it's like, we're not going to hide behind this. We're going to try to do it. And I was very deliberate about one thing. I did very deliberately was, here is the risk of this, and I outlined the risk. Look, we may find out quickly that the TPA was not equipped to do it. And this is what we're doing to be comfortable. We may find out that the network discounts are not going to be as much as we thought. We may, like here, and everybody, when they saw the risks and the benefit, I think if you put it in black and white, they will realize it's worth it. But I think I realized pretty quickly that we were doing something unique just by talking with people externally and internally.
Oh, I love that. Tim Ferriss has a concept. I think he did a TED Talk on this where he says, sure, think about your dreams, but it's also helpful to think about your biggest fears and then to diagnose exactly what horrible thing would happen if your worst fears came true. And when you make that clear to yourself, it's like, oh, that's not that bad. I can live through that. If I went bankrupt or lost my job or got a disease or something, it's, well, here's what I'd do and how it would work out. And it's like, okay, it's not that scary anymore. And that seems to resonate a little bit with the idea here is that we say, oh, we could never do X. That would be too disruptive or too expensive or uncomfortable or whatever. But if you say, well, no, let's park there. What are the actual risks? Because we know the benefits could be huge, but focus on the risks. Because if you quantify the benefits, but the risks are always unknown, or they're just sort of the monster in a closet, nobody's going to act on that. But if you demask it, it gives you permission to take action. At least that's what I'm hearing, how I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, I think quantifying or identifying the risks and showing that you thought of them, and they may give you another tool that you go think about, right? But I think that's important. The other part that is important, people should never forget, the incumbent will take you back. And so if you start contracting and you're like, oh, now I'm through implementation, I'm really worried. I think one of the things that we did is we had milestones on the implementation process, and we follow them. And if they were not coming up to speed, we always had okay, we stay where we were, right? That's like, you can always stay where you are, right? So designing that milestone and having that as part of the RFP, by the way, because the TPA needs to pull it off and say, this is how I'm going to make you comfortable that we can do this. And then now you put it in the contract. This
I
is
love
how,
that.
yeah, put everything that you can in the contract.
Okay.
From a milestones perspective, and from this is what I call success.
I want to stop on that for a minute as well. So you had, in my experience, you had a really unique way of doing the implementation where, as you were saying, you were setting milestones and going through. But as you were implementing, and you already had these agreements that came from the salespeople of, oh, we're going to give you this and that and this and that. And then as you began implementing and began contracting and lawyers got involved, they started trying to pull things away. And that's a very common, that happens all the time, where they overpromise and then they take away the promises. But you didn't let that happen, and you had a really interesting way of approaching it. Could you share a little bit of how you managed that process?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we did, obviously they sell you, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. And the first thing, we had a really good eye, and I had a few employees, but I was really championing that on, okay, how can I turn that comment into an objective metric? And we went and really put objective metrics that went through the implementation and then through customer satisfaction at the end. And we did not let anybody off the hook. So the more metrics and representations that are in the contract, the better. And it took, that's the part that took the longest, is the negotiation of those contracts, because we were trying to make sure that employees were going to be taken care of. And yes, at the end, if we got the network discount and didn't, it was important, but employees getting the card and getting the information and knowing where they're going and understanding and having the right. So the TPA actually put a lot of effort, because they had so much money on the line if they didn't. They put a lot of effort in the front implementations. That was critical, right? Like, you want this business, you're going to invest in this business with me.
Yeah.
That was critical.
I love that. And when they would try to pull things back, what is it that you would always say to the carrier, the TPA, if they're like, oh, well, now maybe we can't deliver what we said we were going to deliver?
Oh, they had teeth on that contract.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
look,
you said, oh, well, I'll just go back to my incumbent then.
back to
That's fine.
where I
I can
was.
walk away. They'll take me today. It's what's the Beyonce song? In the box to the left,
Yeah.
Don't think for a minute that you're irreplaceable, right?
They're still calling on us, and now they're willing to do it with the TPA.
Yeah. The incumbent
It's
is willing to
reality.
take us back tomorrow, so
Where's
don't
the TPA?
try to pull it. And
Yeah.
the TPA, exactly. Everyone's willing to take us back. Everyone wants the business. If you don't deliver as promised, a lot of people think, oh, I've already notified my carrier that I'm leaving them. And so now it's really awkward. It's like interacting with, with an ex, like you change your number and have someone else go get your stuff, right? Where there's this sort of awkwardness, but you embraced that and said, hey, we're going to be doing this thing. But how did you actually present that to the incumbent when you let them go? Did you say, hey, just in case these guys, don't work out, like, don't delete my number? I mean, how did you approach that?
We were deliberate, right? Like, hey, look, we understand we're taking a risk, and it's too bad this got to this place, but would love to stay in touch in case something goes south. And they immediately, it's like, please call me if anything. Now you left that door open, right?
Oh,
call me if anything goes south. We would like to earn your business back. At that point, they're trying to recover their account. So they're hoping that something goes south. So you have to play it really well. You have to keep that relationship. And the other thing that you have to do is have real teeth in those contracts.
it's
especially
a critical tactic.
TPA. Yeah, especially on the TPA, because that's the one that you want to go very, very smooth.
Oh,
In fact, Lee, if I had any learning, I should have put more teeth. I think that there are things that we could have done longer. Like, we were worried about implementation on the very front, and we should have, you know what, they want X dollars, give them a little more if they do this for a year, right? Like the more you put in there, the better.
I love that idea. And you never see that. You see penalties if they
Empty
mess
guys.
up, but there's not bonuses to improve.
Yeah, bonuses to improve. I think it's important. I wish I did it. I didn't think about it at that time. But I was talking to at that time, the head of benefits under me, and I was saying, hey, what could we have done differently? And we both concluded putting more teeth on the TPA, either teeth or incentives on the TPA.
That's great advice. I'm guessing that, yeah, if you could go back and give yourself advice on that.
Yeah.
How do we know if people are liking our benefits? This is one thing that I'll speak to people and say, do people love what you're giving them? You're spending 200 million a year, 500 million a year. How much do people like it? And a lot of employers don't know the answer to that question. How did you wrap your head around that?
I'm going to be blunt. I don't think we actually know. I don't think I knew what they were frustrated about, ever raising deductibles and premiums and expenses, but that was it. I don't think they know, because they don't, it's not like it's like electricity actually. You turn on the light and you say, oh my God, thank God that light is coming from NextEra or from Florida Power and Light, right? Like,
right.
You don't know from. It's the same, right? Like they don't understand how the system works, so they don't know when it's good and when it's bad. But when you change it and they get better service, then they appreciate it. So we did get a lot of positive feedback after.
That's very rare in this industry.
I know, and the question is, are they going to get complacent again? Right? Like, it's again, the lights are on. Nobody's thinking, oh, thank God somebody's running a power plant, right? Like, are they going to get complacent again and think that that's normal?
Yeah, good point. How do we put in place, if you were to pick up where you left off, what are the changes that you might make as a next step to make benefits that are better, that are more affordable, that people do love?
I think for services that you can control as much as you can. So one of the things that the TPA, we had the ability was to direct contract. And so there are many services that would improve the services and or even have better cost components. So to the extent possible, having the right to direct contract and administer through the TPA in case the network is not giving you the right service, that is something that we should all tackle. And that may be your local hospital. Yeah, that may be your local awesome primary care. Primary care is the gate to a lot, and available primary care is very helpful to eliminate costs down the line. And they are not incentivized properly. They're incentivized to move people by the insurance companies. So how can you have that right care, and sometimes even having the right structures for direct contract is helpful if you have the right volume in the right place.
If anybody ever wanted to reach out to you, is it okay to do so maybe on LinkedIn? Is that
absolutely
the easiest place?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn will be the easiest place. If they reach out to you, you know where to find me.
Oh yeah, that's easy. I'll tell them to reach out at late at night on a weekend. That's the best. I'll give them your cell phone. No, I appreciate you. This has been wonderful going through the way that you tackle this problem in such a short period of time. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If any of you listening enjoyed this episode, encourage you to share it with a friend or a colleague. So much to learn here. I'm your host, Lee Lewis. Thank you again for joining us here on Broken Benefits. Thanks for joining us on Broken Benefits. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or on your favorite podcasting platform. Also, please share today's show with a friend or colleague. It's free to do, and it helps us spread the message to as many people as possible. Until next time.